The first thing anyone would remember was the red stamp. It bled through the thin paper like a wound, the words "final notice" soaked into every fiber. The rain outside the emergency room turned the world to glass and blurred headlights, but the stamp stayed sharp in the fluorescent light, the only bright thing in the hands of a girl who looked too small for the weight she was carrying. Her name was Inês, 13. Hoodie, 2 sizes too big, cheap sneakers soaked all the way through, bangs stuck to her forehead, both hands clenched around a plastic folder pressed against her chest, as if she were trying to keep her heart from falling out. On the glass, her breath fogged small circles. On the paper, printed in tidy, uncaring black, Electric Company of São Paulo, disconnection date, today, 8 o'clock. Under that, her mother's name, Clara Alves. In 5 hours, that piece of paper would stop being just a bill. It would collide with a man in a gray suit, drag his past out of hiding, and force a billionaire to remember the face of the nurse who had once held his mother's hand when no one else showed up. Inês stood on the sidewalk facing the sliding doors of Hospital São Gabriel, the flagship of Grupo Monteiro sawed, rain stitching silver lines down the glass. 3 meters away, on the inside, a security desk gleamed under white light, backed by a wall with the hospital's name in cold blue letters. Through the glass, she could see a man in a blazer scrolling on his phone. She lifted the folder and tapped it against the door. The automatic doors sighed, opened half a meter, and stopped with a tired beep. A gust of hospital air rolled out. Antiseptic, coffee, the metallic temps of fear. The security guard barely looked up. "Menorno entered the pois de meia-noite," he said, already annoyed. Kids didn't belong in the lobby at this hour. They complicated things. "I'm not visiting," Inês said. Her voice came out hoarse from the cold. "My mother is on shift. I just need to give her this." She lifted the folder higher. Through the cloudy plastic, the red stamp glared. The guard slid off his stool and walked closer, shoes squeaking on the marble. "What is this? Homework?" "It's our electricity," she said. "They cut it at 8. She has to see it now. She'll know what to do." He rubbed his face with one hand, the way bored people do when they want to signal, "This isn't my problem." "Visiting hours are over," he said. "Family waits outside. Rules. Sit there." He jerked his chin at the metal bench under the awning, out of the rain, but still outside the doors. "She come down at 7. If I wait," Inês said, jaw tightening, "we'll have no light, no fridge, no insulin." That last word slipped out before she could dress it up. It hung in the air between them. "Insulin," he repeated, finally interested. "For her," Inês said, nodding toward the building. "She keeps hers in the fridge." "If they cut, and what do you want me to do?" He tapped the laminated rules booklet by his elbow. "I can't let kids in the staff area. 2 minutos, vira 5, vira 10. Then everyone wants a favor." Rain ran down the back of Inês's neck. Her fingers were going numb, but she refused to shiver in front of him. She shifted her grip on the folder. The cheap plastic tore slightly at the corner. One wrong movement, and the papers inside slid. The bills skidded out and fluttered over the threshold, landing on the marble just past the guard's shoe. The red stamp showed through, ugly and loud, against white. Another shoe stopped next to it, polished leather, dark gray wool pants, perfectly pressed. The kind of shoe no one she knew wore in real life, unless they were on a screen. A man bent to pick up the paper. He had the kind of face that looked like it belonged on magazine covers, sharp jaw, a few strands of artfully silver hair at his temple, but there was a tiredness around his eyes that makeup wouldn't fix. The tie at his neck was loosened, the top button of his shirt open. He had the look of someone who had spent the last 12 hours in rooms where the air didn't move unless a machine told it to. He glanced at the paper, thumb brushing water off the corner. The ink had smudged slightly, but the essentials were clear. Account number. Amount due, 48,760 reals. Disconnection, 8 o'clock. Name, Clara Alves. He lifted his head and saw the girl outside the door, the plastic folder clutched to her chest like armor. "Is Clara your mother?" he asked. Inês hesitated. His voice was smooth, unhurried, the kind she heard in commercials right before someone said, "Exclusive offer." The guard snapped a little straighter behind him. "Yes," she said. She had nothing else, so she chose the truth. The guard cleared his throat. "Dr. Monteiro, sorry for this confusion." The name dropped heavy in the space between them. Monteiro. Inês's eyes flicked to the wall behind the desk where the hospital's logo shone. Grupo Monteiro sawed. The same surname was printed at the bottom of her mother's payslips at home, tiny and official. The same M curled on the pamphlet on their fridge, promising world-class care close to you. Here it was, attached to a person, to this person, suits, polished shoes, phone that probably cost more than 3 months of their rent. The man, Rafael, didn't look at the guard. His gaze stayed on the girl and the bill. "You were going to climb 14 floors to show her this?" he asked. "I just need her to see it," Inês said, shoulders squared. "If she doesn't know, she can't fix it. They'll cut when she's still here." He watched her for a heartbeat. Her hoodie was soaked at the cuffs. Her hair was pulled back with an elastic that had been looped one time too many. Whatever fear she felt, she kept it behind her teeth. Only her knuckles were white on the folder. He didn't know her. He knew the posture. He had been a boy once, in another hospital, on the other side of the bed. Same cocked chin, same stubborn refusal to back away from a situation he had no power to change. He handed the bill back through the gap. "Let her sit inside," he said, voice flat but carrying. "On one of the chairs, she's delivering something important." The guard opened his mouth to protest about rules, optics, precedent. Then he saw Rafael's face and shut it again. "Yes, sir." He tapped the panel. The doors hissed all the way open. Warm, too bright hospital air rushed out. Inês stepped through, sneakers squeaking faintly on the marble. She kept her eyes on the floor, fighting the impulse to apologize for existing. The man in the suit turned away, already half mentally out the door again, one hand going automatically to his phone. He should have left it there. Some poor girl, some bill. These things were everywhere, he knew that. His hospitals treated thousands of people a day. Their systems saw more debt than he ever would. But as she walked past, the bill slipped again, nerves making her fingers clumsy. It slid across the floor, bumping against his shoe. He looked down. Final notice, 8 o'clock. Insulin. The word echoed in his head, tangled with another memory. His mother's chest, rising in shallow breaths, under a flickering, fluorescent light. The nurse shouting for a doctor who was too busy. The smell of bleach, heavy, in his nose. The taste of metal in his mouth. He had spent 25 years building a life to make sure no one he loved ever had to stand in those corridors again. 25 years turning pain into spreadsheets, shame into glass and steel. His driver sent a message. "Car, at the curb, sir." He picked up the bill again, slower this time. The paper was damp. When he turned it over, he saw faint pencil marks on the back, fold lines, scribbles. He didn't look closer. He slid the bill into the inside pocket of his jacket, without quite deciding to. "Rafael," a voice called from behind the admissions desk. "The audit report, Senor. We left it with, email it," he said, already walking toward the doors. He didn't know that in 5 hours a number at the bottom of this same bill would start the smallest rebellion of his career. He didn't know that the girl outside the glass would put words on the back of it that would stick in his throat for months. He also didn't know that the nurse whose name was on it, Clara Alves, was the closest thing he'd ever had to a second chance. Not yet. 14 floors up, Clara tightened the blood pressure cuff around a patient's arm and pretended the black dots, nibbling at the edge of her vision, were a trick of the light. "Relax your hand, Sue Joachim," she said gently. "If you squeeze, it looks like you're more worried than you are." "More worried than I am?" the old man asked. "Mia fille, I'm not worried at all. I'm in 5-star hotel." He lifted his chin toward the recessed lights, the flat screen on the wall, the polished bed rails. Clara smiled. The hospital did look like a hotel in some ways. Clean lines, soft colors, machines that beeped and hummed instead of rattling. The part he didn't see was the schedule printed in tight black font in the nurses' station. The whispers about staff cuts, the way everyone calculated whether they could afford a sick day. The monitor beeped steadily. She noted his readings, glanced at the clock, and felt her stomach lurch. 3:09. Her shift was not even halfway done. Clara, the charge nurse, called from the station, not looking up from her screen. "You have 14:08, needing an IV change. And don't forget the new admission in 14:12. Family's fussy." "I'm on it," Clara replied. She took one step, then another, and the hallway tilted a fraction to the left. She caught the edge of the counter. "Are you okay?" the charge nurse asked, brows pinching for half a second. "Just stood up too fast," Clara said. The woman's eyes slid down to Clara's shoes. Dirty white sneakers, the sole cracked near the ball of the foot. Her socks were damp from a spill in the bedroom where the mop hadn't been wrung properly. "You know, if you fall, there's a form," the charge nurse said. "And if there's a form, there's an investigation. We don't need that. Drink water. Sit for 3 minutes. No heroics." Heroics. Clara almost laughed. Heroes got statues and speeches. She got overtime that never showed up on her paycheck, and a bus that sometimes didn't come. But she did what she was told, ducked into the cramped staff room, downed lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug, leaned against the vending machine long enough for her heartbeat to slow. On the notice board, an email from administration was pinned under a magnet shaped like a heart. "New night staffing optimization protocol," it announced. "Doing more with less." The Monteiro sawed logo at the top was immaculate. Someone had drawn devil horns on the M with blue pen. Clara stared at the horns, then at her reflection in the metal of the vending machine. Dark circles, hair escaping the bun at the base of her neck, white uniform gone slightly gray at the seams from too many washes. She flexed her toes inside her shoes. Pain sparked. She thought of the electricity bill folded in the front pocket of her bag. The red stamp she hadn't had the courage to show her daughter last night, promising disconnection. She had meant to leave it on the table with a note. "Do not worry, I will fix." She hadn't written the note. She never wanted to write something that could turn out to be a lie. Down in the lobby, Inês sat on a plastic chair, the bill back in its folder. The folder hugged to her stomach. The lobby felt too white, too big. The floor shone so much, it reflected her face in warped marble streaks. The man in the gray suit sat 3 chairs away, phone to his ear, back to her. His reflection hovered on the glass wall like a second person. "Yes, I saw the numbers," he was saying. "Night shifts are still overstaffed. We can cut at least 1 nurse per ward and bring costs down 8%. No adverse events so far. It's safe, safe." The word rolled over the tiles and into her ears. She didn't understand everything, English phrases, investor names, acronyms, but she understood enough. He was talking about people like her mother, as if they were line items. Her fingers dug into the plastic. The folder creaked. He hung up after a few more sentences that all sounded like money. He looked at his watch. 3:17. His driver's taillights glowed red through the glass, blurred by rain. He stood, adjusted his tie, and headed for the doors. As he passed Inns, his eyes flicked once to the folder, to the red ghost of the stamp showing through. It would have been easy to keep walking. Instead, he said, not quite looking at her, "Security will let you know when your mother comes down." "Okay," Inns said. She didn't thank him. She wasn't sure, yet, if she owed him anything. He nodded at the guard, sleeves catching the LED reflection of the hospital's name, his name, above the entrance. "Jeed Knight, Senior," the guard said. "Knight," Rafael replied. The doors opened with a soft hiss. The rain outside had softened into a steady, thin curtain. He walked toward the black sedan, waiting at the curb, every step measured. He'd had a long day. There would be another one tomorrow. He thought about occupancy rates, litigation risks, the puzzle of keeping investors happy without openly extorting the sick. He did not think about the bill in his pocket. Not yet. Behind him, Inns stared at the glass doors as they closed. The letters Monteiro sawed glowed above them. She took out the bill and unfolded it fully. The amount due seemed bigger now that she'd seen the man whose name printed itself on her mother's badge. Almost 500 reais. Rent for half a month. Groceries for several weeks. Shoes for her mother. Bus passes. Vitamins. At home, in their kitchenette, the light above the sink had flickered when she left. Inns pictured their fridge humming, the insulin pen in the door, the yogurt, the leftovers in plastic containers. She pictured a man in an orange vest, lifting the lid of the gray box in the hall and pulling a lever. Darkness, measured in heartbeats. She pulled a pen from her backpack, a cheap blue one, cap chewed, and turned the bill over. In the blank space, under the printed threats and legalese, she wrote in small, careful letters, "I'm sorry, I will help, too, please help." The last two words were dotted darker than the others, the pen digging into the pulp. She folded the bill so her words were hidden inside, tucked it back into the folder, and held on. By the time Clara finished her shift, the sky over the city had started to pale from black to a tired gray blue. Dawn always looked dirt-colored from the 14th floor. Her feet were on fire. Her eyes felt sanded. She stepped into the elevator with 3 other nurses and an intern doctor who yawned so hard his jaw cracked. No one spoke. Tired people knew silence was the only polite language at that hour. On the ride down, Clara thought about the electricity bill waiting on the table. She imagined Inz's face when she saw it, the way her daughter's mouth would flatten into the thin line of someone trying not to scream. Maybe she could borrow from a colleague. Maybe she could call the electric company and beg. Maybe the elevator doors slid open. The first thing she saw was her daughter, not on a bus, not in bed, but sitting on the lobby chair, head tipped back against the wall, mouth slightly open in sleep. The plastic folder lay in her lap, her fingers still hooked around the edge. Clara's heart lurched. Relief, anger, love collided. She crossed the lobby in 3 steps and crouched. "Inns," she said quietly, brushing damp hair off her daughter's forehead. Wake up. What are you doing here?" Inns blinked awake, eyes taking a second to focus. When they did, she sat up too fast. "Me, the electricity. They're cutting it at 8. I know," Clara said, exhausted. "I know." She reached for the folder. Inês handed it over without argument. Clara unfolded the bill and braced for the red stamp she already knew was there. It glared up at her. Final notice, date, amount, disconnection time, everything she had expected, exactly as printed. Something else clung at the bottom, a thinner line of text in smaller font. Payment received, 5/23. Amount, 48,760 reals. Payment method, corporate transfer. Payer Monteiro Hujuns S.E. Autor Foramone. Clara's brain refused to process the words. Her eyes saw them. Her mind bounced off. It hit in pieces. Payment received, 5/23. Monteiro. Her knees went weak. The bill trembled in her hand. They paid it, she whispered. Who? Inês asked, though she already knew the answer, or at least the name. Clara pointed at the bottom of the bill with a shaking finger. Inês leaned in. Monteiro Holdings. The word looked different down there, in that context. Not as logo, not as badge, but as someone pressing pay on an account that was not theirs. It's a mistake, Clara said, voice thin. It must be. They don't just pay like that. They did, Inês said. The thrill in her chest came mixed with anger, a familiar cocktail. The money's there. The fridge is still humming. Clara looked up at the ceiling, as if expecting to see cables glowing with electricity, stretching from some corporate tower straight into her apartment. Maybe. She swallowed. Maybe this is some program, charity. They talk about social responsibility on TV. I watch TV, too, Inês said. Charity usually comes with a camera. The lobby hummed around them. A cleaner pushed a mop. A stretcher rolled past. A nurse laughed at something a colleague said. No one seemed to be watching. No one handed them a pamphlet or took a picture for social media. At the security desk, the guard looked anywhere but at them. For a few seconds, there was only the bill, the name at the bottom, and the silence between mother and daughter. Then, slowly, Clara folded the paper again, as if it might crumble into dust if she moved too fast. We'll keep it, she said. We'll pay the next ones ourselves. We don't owe anyone anything. This was, she didn't have a word for it, accident, miracle, error, trap, incident. Fingers brushed the back of the folded bill as Clara slipped it into her bag. She felt the raised impression of her own writing inside the please help pressed into the fiber. In living rooms around the city, people sat on second-hand couches with their own final notice envelopes on the table. Some cried, some cursed, some tore them in half before they even opened them. If they had been able to see this moment in the hospital lobby, in front of the Monteiro logo, they might have leaned forward closer to the screen. It was the first big turn, the moment where fear about one bill ended and a bigger question opened. Any algorithm trained on human curiosity would know. This is where a story pins people in their seats. A girl's handwriting had touched a billionaire's wallet. His transfer had saved their light. From here, the game only got more complicated. Back at the Monteiro Holdings Tower, on the 32nd floor, Rafael sat at the head of a conference table that reflected his face back at him in stretched black glass. The skyline spread out behind him, lines of high-rises under a sky that still carried traces of dawn. On the screen, at the end of the room, a graph glowed, costs versus revenue, beds versus staff. A red line climbed, a blue line dipped. Our night staffing optimization has been a success, the CFO was saying. 3 nurses per ward, on average, 30 beds covered, no critical incidents reported. Our cost per patient day has dropped 8% compared to last year. Heads nodded around the table. The operations director smiled the smile of someone who'd already baked a bonus into his expectations. Investors are very happy, he added, especially with the reduced overtime. We're proving we can maintain standards with fewer people, Rafael finished. He didn't raise his voice, but the air in the room tightened. Staff, the man corrected, a beat too late. Our human resources. The phrase barely registered in his ears anymore. It had been part of his vocabulary for years. Today, it grated. Raphael's hand rested on a single sheet of paper in front of him, instead of the 50-page report everyone else had. He had pulled the electricity bill from his jacket pocket the second he sat down, smoothed it flat on the black glass, and read it again, line by line. Account number. Amount due, payment received, Monteiro Holdings. He had instructed his assistant to process the payment as soon as his car door shut that morning. Anonymous, from CSR budget, he'd said. No PR, sir. Our corporate social responsibility, just do it. Juliana. Now, the receipt lay under his fingers, the printed confirmation from the electric company, attached with a staple. He could feel, even without turning it over, the faint bumps of the girl's pen on the back. On the screen, the operations director clicked to the next slide. More bars, more percentages, a bullet point about the new helipad project for Snow Gabriel's roof. Gives us a competitive edge, the director said. Evacuation for high-profile patients, faster transfers from accidents. And, frankly, it looks good in brochures. Someone chuckled. Rafael didn't. In the last quarter, the CFO went on, Monteiro Collections has also reached record recovery rates. We've expanded beyond our own hospitals. Utility bills, credit cards, telecom, small tickets add up. Monteiro Collections. The name sat in the room like an uninvited guest. On the other side of the city, in a building with peeling yellow paint and laundry strung on wires across the balconies, a woman in a faded floral dress sat at a formica table with a phone pressed to her ear. Ma'am, this is just a friendly reminder, a woman's voice said, reading off a screen. Your account is 90 days past due. If you can make a payment today, of any amount, I told you. My mother is in the hospital, the woman said, voice cracking. I'm paying for medicine. The logo on the collector's script was small but clear. Monteiro Collections, SE, Autor. If you can't pay something now, the voice continued, your case will be escalated. There may be field visits. A knock sounded at the woman's door. 3 quick raps. Her heart jumped into her throat. She glanced at the peephole and saw 2 men in cheap polo shirts, one of them holding a clipboard. Inns. Go to the bedroom, Clara's neighbor whispered into the receiver, though no one named Inns lived there. The script on the other end never changed. Back in the boardroom, Rafael felt a phantom echo of that knock in his chest. He had heard that kind of call 1,000 times, in passing. On phones, in cabs, on TV, in dramatizations, on recordings, in meetings, when someone proudly played How We're Closing the Gap. He had told himself those were other companies, other men's problems. Monteiro Collections was just business, a way to capture value from accounts that would otherwise die on the vine. It's efficient, he had said once. We're just better than the others at organizing chaos. Now, the chaos had a face, a girl with damp hair and a folder, a nurse with cracked shoes, a red stamp. Rafael, the CFO prompted, mistaking his silence. Your thoughts on the helipad, on expanding the staffing cuts to the ICU as well. We can know, the word landed, without decoration. No to what? The operations director asked, a little laugh at the edge of his voice, thinking he must have misheard. No to expanding the cuts, Rafael said, and no to the helipad. At least for now. Someone's pen stopped moving. The staffing protocol is working, the CFO reminded him carefully, as if explaining it to a forgetful uncle. We're operating lean, and quality metrics are stable. The helipad is in the investor's deck. They're expecting it. It's symbolic. So is 3 nurses trying to cover 30 patients at 3 in the morning, Rafael said. So is a pair of shoes worn through to the sole, because someone worked every night for months to cover the gap I created with this protocol. He hadn't meant to say it like that. Personal, angry. The room wasn't used to hearing anger from him. He'd cultivated a reputation for controlled, almost chilly. Enfermera boa aguenta buraco, the operations director joked weakly, trying to lighten the mood. They're tough. They chose this job. The line was supposed to dissipate tension. Instead, it pressed a button in Rafael he hadn't realized was still wired. His hand tightened on the bill. In his mind, the hospital he'd grown up in superimposed itself over the sleek slides on the screen. Narrow corridor, walls a sickly green, the air thick with disinfectant and sweat. His mother, on a gurney, clutching her chest, eyes wide. A nurse shouting for a doctor, voice going hoarse, no one coming. The nurse had been tiny, hair stuffed under a cheap cap, shoes soaked from a leak in the ceiling. She had moved fast anyway, trying to be in all places at once. When she realized no one was going to answer her calls, she had come back to him, to the boy pressed against the wall. I'm sorry, she'd told him, in a voice like sandpaper. We're doing the best we can with what we have. He had hated that sentence more than anything. He had looked at the man in a cheap suit who shrugged through explanations about budgets and beds and weighted lists and thought, if I ever become you, I hope someone drags me back into this corridor and makes me look. He had built an empire on the idea that private hospitals could do better than that. That if you just put enough money and machines and smart people in the same building, no one's mother would die on a stretcher because of efficiency. Somewhere along the way, his spreadsheets had started to look suspiciously like the ones from the public hospital, with different fonts. We're not amorticiders, he said now, the word tasting foreign in this room. They're not shock absorbers, they're people. People cost money, the CFO said bluntly. He had worked with Rafael long enough to remember the days when Rafael was the one saying that. We're not a charity. Our responsibility is to the company. 2 jobs, our responsibility, Rafael cut in, is to not become the thing we say we're better than. Silence. We add 1 more nurse to night shifts in Snow Gabriel, immediately, he said, for per ward, minimum. Trial it in 2 other units. We cut the helipad for now. And we re-examine the so-called optimization that's going to hit profitability, the CFO said, no longer gentle. Yes, Rafael said. It is. He didn't smile. He didn't soften it with a joke. A tension coil in his chest loosened a fraction when he said it, like a belt notch easing. This would be the first of many arguments he would lose in that room. Today, they gave him this one. They grumbled, they warned, they circled back to investors. In the end, the helipad became a line item, marked future phase, and an extra nurse appeared on the night schedule at Snow Gabriel, invisible in the marketing materials but obvious in the corridors where monitors beeped. It wasn't enough. It was something. Later, when the room emptied, Rafael sat alone at the table, head tipped back, looking at his own reflection in the ceiling. The city through the glass looked like a circuit board, blinking, humming. He turned the bill over. On the back, pressed into the paper, 3 lines curved in small, careful handwriting. I'm sorry. I will help, too. Please, help. He read them once, then again. No threat, no demand, Just apology, promise, plea. The combination stabbed somewhere under his ribs. He slipped the bill into his wallet, behind a photo of his mother he kept there, taken on a day when she had been laughing, before the corridors, before the flickering lights. That night, back in the apartment, under the steady hum of a fridge that had not gone silent, Inês sat at the kitchen table with the bill spread out in front of her again. The words "payment received" hadn't smudged or evaporated. The name at the bottom hadn't either. Monteiro Holdings. If the man in the gray suit had just walked out of her life after that, the story would have been odd enough. But there was something about the way the letters sat on the page, about the fact that her "please help" had clearly landed somewhere, that wouldn't let her rest. She turned the paper, traced the faint outline of her own handwriting, then pulled a sheet from her school notebook. Her hand shook at first, then steadied. To whoever paid our electricity and bought us some time, my name is Inês. My mother is Clara. She works nights at Snow Gabriel. You already know our account number. You should know other numbers too. She sleeps for hours on good days. She walks at least 10,000 steps per shift, most of them in shoes with holes. She hasn't had a weekend off in months. You saw one final notice. We have more. She stopped, gnawed the end of her pen, then kept going. Thank you for paying that bill. It matters. It kept her insulin cold. It kept our food. But you should also know, this is what your savings look like. I am not asking for more presents. I am asking you to stop breaking her. At the bottom, she hesitated, then added, you signed your name on our light, so I am signing mine, Inês Alves. She read it twice. It sounded angry. It sounded naive. It sounded exactly like how she felt. In the hallway outside, the neighbor's phone rang. A thin wall and bad wiring carried every sound. The woman's voice was already tight. No, I told you, next month, please. My son is Inês recognized the tone from her mother's calls. This will escalate, a woman's voice on the other end said, the words muffled but the script familiar. Our field team will need to visit. There may be service interruption. A knock followed, firm, 3 times. Inês's hand slid under her papers, fingers closing around the electricity bill, as if someone might come for it too. She finished the letter, folded it around the bill, tucked both into a junk mail envelope, and wrote in shaky capitals, Monteiro Holdings, Human Resources. The next morning, she skipped one math class and took a bus downtown. The Monteiro Tower rose out of the avenue like an accusation, all glass, all angles, reflective enough that the clouds seemed to cling to it. People in crisp shirts and dresses streamed in and out through revolving doors. A security guard in a suit that fit too well watched the flow. Inside, the lobby smelled like perfume and coffee, not bleach. The floor was a different kind of marble, warmer, beige with veins. Inês walked up to the reception desk, backpack straps digging into her shoulders, letter slick with sweat in her hand. The receptionist had a headset, red lipstick, nails like claws. Delivery, she asked, taking in the hoodie, the shoes, the envelope. Internau, Inês saí. They told me to leave it with HR. The woman frowned. Who told you that? HR, Inês said. If someone asked for names, it would be a problem. But no one ever asked for names from people they thought didn't matter. The receptionist sighed, took the envelope between 2 fingers like it might be sticky. It will be routed, she said, already moving on to the man in a suit behind Inês. By the time the envelope left the building, it had been scanned, stamped, and misinterpreted twice. The path went like this. Reception gives mailroom, gives HR clerk, gives legal, might be a complaint, gives CEO's assistant for your awareness. Legal didn't read everything. They read enough. You'll want to see this, the lawyer wrote in a note attached to the scan. Ref CSR and staffing. Also mentions Monteiro collections indirectly. When Juliana dropped the printed letter on Rafael's desk, he almost pushed it aside with the pile of contracts. The subject line read simply, "Letter from patient family." He saw the account number before the salutation and stopped. He recognized it. He read every word, then turned the sheet over and saw his own surname at the bottom of the electricity receipt, printed like proof. "This is what your savings look like. I will help, too, but I can't fix the things you break." His office, usually cool no matter how hot the city got, felt hot that day. His collar chafed. He spun his chair toward the window, letters still in hand, and stared at the lines of buildings. Somewhere in that mess was Clara's apartment. Somewhere was the neighbors. Somewhere, someone was listening to another collection call from his company. He had long ago trained himself not to feel like a villain. It was bad for business, bad for sleep. Today, there was no such padding. The shame came sharp and clear. On the corner of his desk, his phone chimed. A notification from his calendar. Quarterly review, Monteiro collections. He almost laughed. Timing. There were 3 people in that meeting, the collections director, 2 managers, and a slide deck full of numbers, recovery rates, call volumes, field visit efficiency. "Collections is one of our healthiest units," the director said, clicking to a bar chart that climbed steadily, quarter to quarter. "We've expanded contracts with utilities, banks, telecoms, from small delinquent accounts to large. We have packages for all. Our script is tested. Our agents, do we collect for the electric company?" Rafael interrupted. The director blinked. "Yes, for several." "Why?" The woman on the other side of the city held her phone at arm's length so she didn't have to hear every guilt-laden word. The logo at the top of the bill she couldn't pay matched the logo at the top of the script the agent was reading from. Rafael pictured her. He hadn't met her. It didn't matter. He could multiply her by thousands. Same fear, same apologies, same plea, same 3 knocks on the door. "For how many of our own staff do we collect?" he asked. Silence. "I don't have that number offhand," the director said. "We anonymize data, but statistically, some employees fall into our own net," Rafael finished. The director shifted in his chair. "It's comprehensive. That's good business. We keep revenue in-house." Rafael looked down at the letter. "My mother works nights at Snow Gabriel. You should know other numbers, too." "You're proud of this," he said. "Not a question. It's one of our best performers," the director said carefully. "In a downturn, collection is stable. People always owe something. So we run their bodies down in our hospitals," Rafael said. "And when they fall behind, we send someone to knock on their door." No one answered that. "No," Rafael said. His chest tightened. He didn't know if it was anger or something closer to panic. "We're out." The director frowned. "Out? Where?" "Of this business," Rafael said. "We sell Monteiro collections, or shut it down. I don't care which. Start the process today. That will cut an entire revenue stream," one of the managers blurted. "Sir, respectfully, shareholders will still have dividends," Rafael said. "We'll survive without squeezing the last utility bill out of someone's grandmother." The director swallowed. "We have contracts, penalties. It's not so simple." "Nothing about this is simple," Rafael said. "Do it anyway." He left them there, staring, and walked back to his office with the letter crumpled in his fist. That night, after printing the sale documents, after legal drafted statements about strategic realignment, Rafael sat alone in his office with the lights off. Only the city and his monitor glowed. His reflection looked older in the glass. The lines at his mouth had deepened. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small orange bottle. Anxiolytics, doctor's orders from 3 months ago. After a routine checkup where his blood pressure was a little high and his answers about sleep too vague. It's stress, the cardiologist had said. You need to slow down. Your heart is not a spreadsheet, Rafael. He had chuckled, pocketed the prescription, and gone back to 3 meetings about expansion that day. He shook 2 pills into his hand, stared at them, then put one back and swallowed the other dry. The taste chalked his tongue. On the other side of the city, Clara finished another shift and walked into the locker room to find a cardboard shoebox on the top shelf of her locker. Her name, in block letters, was written on the lid. Her first instinct was that someone had left something by mistake. Gifts with her name on them did not happen. She checked the other lockers. No boxes, no pranks. She reached up, muscles in her shoulders aching from 12 hours of moving human bodies and equipment, and brought the box down. Inside, under thin tissue paper, sat a pair of white sneakers, sturdy, not fancy, cushioned soles, breathable fabric, size, hers. There was a note folded under the paper, clipped to a simple voucher, for the feet that carry everyone else. No logo, no signature, just those words. Her throat closed. Her old sneakers sat on the floor beneath her, soles worn nearly through. The right one had a little crescent-shaped dark patch where her big toe had pressed for too long. Colleagues milled around, changing, laughing in that post-shift hysteria that comes when the adrenaline drops. New shoes, Dona Clara, one of them asked, eyebrows arched. Did you win the lottery? I don't know where they came from, Clara said honestly. HR is doing some pilot program. Another nurse chimed in. Well-being fund. I saw an email. Only some people got picked, someone else muttered. Must be nice. The words came with a slight sting. Envy was easier to manage than resentment, but the line between them was thin. Clara slid her feet into the new sneakers. The insoles cupped her arches like hands. When she stood, it felt like someone had snuck springs under the floor. She took a step, her joints didn't protest. Another. The relief was so sharp, it made her want to cry. Careful, the charge nurse called from the doorway, half teasing, half serious. Walk like that, and they'll think we gave you a promotion. It's just shoes, Clara said, but she couldn't quite keep the gratitude out of her voice. Later, in the staff room, she checked her email. There it was, an internal memo. Staff support, fund, pilot. Anonymous gestures to recognize effort. She reread the phrase, anonymous gestures, twice. There was a paragraph about selection criteria that said nothing. She thought of the electricity bill paid at 5:23. The timing, the name at the bottom. In the kitchen at home, under the same humming fridge, Inês listened as Clara recounted the locker room whispers, the memo, the way her colleagues looked at her shoes. It's them, Inês said. The same people who paid the electricity. They're trying to buy you off. Clara set a pan on the stove, hand resting on the edge, for a second longer than necessary. Or trying to fix something, she said. They're the ones breaking it, Inês shot back. They also hired me, Clara replied. They're not. One thing, she stirred beans, poured rice. The movements were automatic, muscle memory. Her mind was split, one part in the kitchen, one back in the locker room, bargaining with fate. I wrote them a letter, Inês blurted. Clara froze, spoon halfway to the pot. You, what? I wrote to whoever paid the bill, Inês said. I told them about you, about your feet, about the shifts. I told them to stop breaking you. The room seemed to shrink. You went to their building, Clara asked, voice louder than she meant. Yes. Alone. Yes. Are you out of your mind? Clara slammed the spoon down. Beans splashed. You don't go to those places alone, Inns. You don't give them your name. They have power. They already have everything, Inns snapped. They already decide whether our light stays on. If they're going to have that power, they should at least know your name, too. She looked at her mother with a stubbornness Rafael would have recognized. Clara pressed her fingers to her temples. The apartment hummed. The fridge, the neighbor's TV through the wall, the bus on the street. Her head hurt. What did you write? She asked finally, softer. Inns recited pieces, silently. This is what your savings look like. I will help, too. I can't fix what you break. Out loud, she summarized. I told them thank you, she said, and that it wasn't enough. Clara covered her mouth with one hand, part horror, part pride. That's not how you talk to people who hold all the cards, she whispered. Maybe it's about time someone did, Inns said. In another apartment, the neighbor held her phone. The call from Monteiro Collections cut off mid-script because the line dropped. The men at the door looked at each other, shrugged, and left a paper under the mat. Weeks later, when the sale of Monteiro Collections went through, that office would close, and the scripts would be shredded. The calls would stop. New agents with a different logo would eventually pick up a different list. The neighbor would have a quiet stretch where no one called at dinner time. She would never know why. The letter sat on Rafael's desk for 3 days. He read it every morning before checking his email. He folded and unfolded it until the creases went soft. He asked HR for Clara's file, performance reviews, schedule patterns, notes about overtime irregularities and union involvement. Nothing that deserved punishment. Nothing that justified exhaustion. He told HR to credit her with the training days she'd attended but never been paid for. He told them to adjust her schedule to include real days off, not just scattered shifts. He told them to expand the staff fund and strip any idea of branding away. No PR, no press release, he said. This is not content, then why do it? Someone asked. He didn't answer with something he could print. He answered, mentally, with a narrow corridor, a dying woman, a nurse's hoarse apology, and a girl's letter. Monteiro Collections was gone within 6 months. Sold quietly, the name licensed away. The reports he got about it after that had different logos. He deleted them unread. Inns didn't see the sale announcement. It ran in the business pages. Tiny, she saw. Instead, the absence. Fewer collection envelopes in the mail. Fewer calls. Fewer knocks. She watched the neighbor open her mailbox and frown, then laugh a little, putting away the single white envelope instead of the usual stack. Achison Gabriel, a fourth nurse, appeared on the night schedule. It wasn't miraculous, but the difference was immediate. There were still too many patients, too much work, but bathroom breaks were no longer luxuries, and no one had to run quite as fast all the time. The fund grew into something quiet and real. A bus pass slipped into a single mother's locker, a grocery voucher left under a keyboard, a small envelope with enough for a dentist bill under a coffee mug. Most of the recipients suspected HR. Some suspected a kind doctor. No one said the billionaire. When they said Monteiro, it was usually with a sigh, in the context of policy or pay. Months passed. Clara's feet hurt less. Her back still hurt. Life was still hard. Rent didn't care about quiet funds or small victories. But when she came home, there were more evenings when she could sit with her daughter for 15 minutes and ask about her day without falling asleep over the question. Inns kept the electricity bill in the plastic folder. Now, along with 3 other receipts, that marked small financial miracles, the light, the time HR corrected an old miscalculation, the day a late fee disappeared. She pulled it out sometimes, traced the Monteiro Holdings line, and imagined an office, a man, a choice. She didn't believe in fairy tales, but she believed in levers. She had found one. One afternoon, after school, she sat in the hospital cafeteria with her math textbook open. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The microwave hummed. A vending machine flickered a select item prompt it would ignore. Her mother had insisted she stay out of hallways and nursing stations. "You grew up in this smell," Clara had said, wrinkling her nose at the disinfectant. "Go find other smells. Coffee that isn't burnt. Books that don't talk about diseases." The cafeteria was a compromise. It smelled of boiled vegetables and cheap coffee, but there were tables and sockets for phone chargers and a big window that looked out at the rain. She underlined a problem, something about interest rates and debts, that made her grip the pen tighter than necessary. Voices ebbed and flowed around her. Nurses swapping stories, residents comparing cases, relatives explaining diagnoses to each other in low voices. Then a different tone drifted over, smoother, more measured. "If we don't restructure, the board will." Her eyes flicked up without meaning to. A small group of suits stood near the window, coffee cups in hand. At their center, slightly apart, Rafael felt out of place among the cafeteria's plastic chairs. His suit, gray again, looked too expensive for the chipped table. Still, he stood there, one hand in his pocket, coffee in the other, listening as an operations manager recited numbers. His hair was a little thinner. Fine lines at the corners of his eyes had deepened. His posture, however, was the same, straight, contained, like someone who would rather lean on nothing. He scanned the room while the other man talked, an old habit from his days making unannounced visits. He saw trays, uniforms, tired faces. He saw a group of nurses laughing at something on a phone screen. He saw a kid doing homework with a plastic folder by her elbow. He saw her. The recognition was subtle, a flicker in his eyes. She had changed, taller, maybe, less baby in her face, more sharp lines, eyebrows pulled together in concentration. The hoodie was different. The folder was the same. Their eyes met. Between them were tables, chairs, staff, the weight of everything that had happened without them ever speaking directly. A paid bill, a letter, lost calls, sold companies, extra nurses. He almost walked over. The impulse shocked him. He was not a man who approached strangers in cafeterias. He avoided even acquaintances when he could. But what would he say? "I got your letter. I closed a company. I lie awake thinking about the difference between saving money and saving people." None of that would fit in a casual exchange. He lifted his coffee, nodded. The gesture carried more sincerity than any of his investor smiles. Inês didn't smile back. She nodded once. Her chin lifted a fraction. Her eyes didn't soften. It wasn't hatred anymore. It wasn't forgiveness, either. It was something in between, awareness, vigilance. He turned back to his group. The manager finished his sentence about margins. "Make the change," Rafael said. "We'll keep the extra nurses. We'll delay the VIP wing expansion if we have to. They'll ask what happened to the helipad," the manager said. "Tell them we realized what we needed more was feet on the floor," Rafael replied. It was the kind of line PR people loved, but he didn't call PR. He threw the coffee cup away, the cardboard bending in his hand, and left the cafeteria with his entourage. Inês watched him go. She looked down at her math problem. Interest rates, compounding, the way small percentages nibbled away at big numbers. She thought about how those concepts could hurt and help, how they were always taught as neutral truths when they weren't. By then, Rafael's heart had started sending him its own memos. He woke up some nights with his chest tight, breathing shallow. He told himself it was anxiety, not a real problem. He sat on the edge of his bed, in the dark, sweating, feeling like someone had put a heavy hand on his sternum. The cardiologist read his tests, frowned, and used words like panic episodes and warning signs. "You need to slow down," he said again. "Delegate, sleep, learn to say no to meetings." Rafael nodded and left with a prescription bottle. He took some pills, kept most of his yeses. On a Thursday that began like any other, with emails and coffee, and a call to London that went long, the hand on his chest finally pushed harder. He was standing in a boardroom, pointing at a chart. Someone was asking about share buybacks. Someone else was pushing for a merger. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The room blurred at the edges. His tongue went dry. His fingers tingled. A cold wave swept through his limbs. His heart raced, then stumbled, then raced again. The tip of the laser pointer shook on the screen. "Rafael," someone said. He heard his own voice from far away. "I need a minute." He meant to step outside. He took one step. The carpet tipped. His vision narrowed into a tunnel. For a moment, he wasn't in the Monteiro Tower. He was back in that public hospital corridor, his mother's hand slipping out of his, the nurse shouting for a doctor who never came, the same taste of copper on his tongue, the same smell of disinfectant that didn't cover the smell of fear. Then there was nothing. When he came back, the world was moving. Ceiling tiles slid slowly above him. Bright lights stung his eyes. Voices overlapped. The space felt too open, too noisy. The first thing he saw clearly was the sliding glass doors of an emergency room. He knew those doors. He owned those doors. Snow Gabriel. He had once joked with his driver that if he ever collapsed, he'd rather fall on his own marble. The joke had become protocol. In the unseen manual of his life, the line read, "In case of emergency, take him to Snow Gabriel." The joke didn't feel funny now. A paramedic walked alongside the gurney, hand on the rail. The fluorescent tubes overhead flickered as they passed. Somewhere, a baby cried. He tried to push himself up. His muscles didn't listen. "Easy," a voice said, firm and calm. "Fica tranquillo," not the paramedics. She stepped into his field of vision like someone emerging from behind a curtain. Her hair was pulled back, a few rebellious strands stuck to her temples. Her uniform was unremarkable, the same pale green as dozens of others in the ER. Her sneakers white, sturdy, with blue wings on the side, squeaked softly on the floor as she moved. Her badge read, Clara, ARN. He stared at the letters and forgot how to breathe. His heart monitor beeped faster. "Blood pressure is coming down," she said to the paramedic, eyes on the monitor. "Pulse is irregular, but not catastrophic." She checked the adjusted the oxygen tube under his nose, moved with the quick economy of someone used to doing 10 things in 10 seconds. His throat closed around words that didn't know which order to come in. He managed. "You're okay," she said. She didn't know who he was. "Looks like a panic episode." Her hand rested on his chest for a moment, feeling the rise and fall. It was a professional touch. It felt like someone had reached past his ribs and grabbed his heart. She glanced at the monitors again. Satisfied for the moment, she leaned closer, eyes meeting his Señor está bien. She asked, the automatic question, carrying a weight it hadn't carried in years, for him. Those 10 seconds broke something. In another life, she might have recognized him from a magazine cover, a TV interview, A hospital newsletter. Founder, visionary, chairman. Here, under these lights, on this bed, he was just another man, scared of dying. She didn't see the electricity bill in his wallet, folded and soft. She didn't see the letter in his drawer. She didn't know that her own name had sat on his desk more than once. She watched his chest, listened to his breathing, felt his skin lightly damp with sweat. He almost said her name, almost told her everything. 10 seconds. Then someone called her from another cubicle. A child was crying. Another monitor, alarmed. Her hand lifted. "I'll be back," she said. "Keep breathing, slow, in, out." She moved away, sneakers squeaking, her white-clad back receding into the organized chaos of the ER. He lay there, heart still racing, staring at the ceiling. At the edge of the ER, just past the waiting chairs, Inês sat with the plastic folder on her lap, book forgotten. She had come with Clara at the start of the shift, planning to wait in the cafeteria, then go home. Then a call had gone out on the staff chat. "Emergency patient is the boss." The words had spread faster than any alarm. She didn't do gossip, but she understood significance. If the man who owned half the buildings with his name on them was lying on a gurney in front of her, that meant something was cracking. She recognized him even before she saw his face clearly. The gray suit, the controlled posture now gone, replaced by limp limbs, the expensive watch on the wrist that hung off the bed. The glass doors slid open and closed with every new arrival, bringing in slices of the outside world, drizzle, muffled traffic, the smell of wet asphalt. Inside, the soundscape was monitors, cries, orders. Clara passed by the chairs on her way from one bed to another. Her eyes met Inês's for a heartbeat. Her face carried the same unreadable mixture it did at the end of every shift: tiredness, focus, worry, love. Inês's gaze flicked from her mother to the man, Rafael, pale on the bed, Clara, steady at someone else's side. She remembered the electricity bill with his company's name at the bottom, the letter she had folded around it, the steps to the tower, the cafeteria nod, the whisper at the bus stop that Monteiro collections had been sold. She remembered writing, "I will help, too. I can't fix what you break." Here he was, something broken in him that no money could fix in one go. Later, once his tests came back clean for heart attack, the young ER doctor stepped to his bedside with a tablet. "Mr. Monteiro," he said carefully, "your heart is structurally fine." This was a panic episode, most likely triggered by stress. "Most likely," Rafael repeated. "You'll need follow-up," the doctor said. "Psychological, not just physical. Panic attacks are their signals, warnings, red stamps, in a different language. We can move you to a private area," the doctor added, glancing at the other patients half hidden behind curtains. "VIP wing." "No," Rafael said. The word came before he thought. "Here is fine. Are you sure?" the doctor asked, thrown by the answer. "I built the VIP wing," Rafael said. "I know what it looks like. It looks like a hotel. I'd rather stay here, where the nurses live." The doctor didn't understand the whole sentence. He understood enough to nod. Rafael stayed. For 3 more hours, he lay on that bed, monitors beeping in rhythm with the person in the next bed over. He listened to Clara's voice 3 curtains away, soothing a scared child. He watched the ceiling. He breathed. He thought about that corridor from his childhood, overlaying itself on this one. He thought about the nurse who had apologized. He thought about the electricity bill in his wallet. He thought about the fact that, right now, someone was watching him from the waiting area, folder on her lap. A nurse, not Clara, came later with discharge papers. Your ECG was normal, she said. Blood work is okay. You should see a psychiatrist. Or a cardiologist again. Or both. He nodded, signed where she pointed. As he slid off the bed, his legs trembled. He stood still for an extra second, letting the world steady. On his way to the doors, he passed the chairs. Innes sat in the middle row, folder perched like always. Their eyes met at eye level for the first time. Up close, he could see the freckles across her nose, the scar on her chin from some childhood fall, the seriousness in her gaze that never quite lifted, even when her mouth wasn't tight. Your mother is very good at what she does, he said. His voice was quiet, but clear. Innes considered this. I know, she said. I think. He searched for words that didn't sound like a press release. I think I owe her my life. At least 10 seconds of it. She tilted her head. You owe her more than that, she said matter-of-factly. You owe a lot of nurses, a lot of things. He didn't flinch. Yes, he said, I do. He could have left it there. Acknowledgement, moment, exit. He felt something heavier, pressing behind his teeth. I got your letter, he said. Her fingers tightened on the folder. I guessed, she said. It made me do things, he said. Sell things, change things. Not enough, but some. That's not an answer, she said. Her voice stayed steady. That's what people like you say when they want to feel better about themselves. He smiled, small and tired. You're right. He took a breath that felt like a gamble. I'm stepping down as CEO at the end of the year, he said. Board's decision. My decision too. I'll stay on the board for a while, then maybe I won't. I'll have less power over budgets. More time to remember faces. It wasn't a dramatic fall. There would be no headlines screaming disgrace. In the business pages, it would read like a smooth succession. Health reasons, new challenges, time to focus on philanthropy. For him, it would feel like losing a limb and regrowing a different one. Why are you telling me that? Innes asked. Because you asked if I was going to stop hurting her, he said. I can't promise that the company with my name on it will never hurt anyone again. I can promise I won't be the one writing the policies that do it without looking. She looked at him for a long time. People in waiting rooms around the city would have leaned forward then, if they could see it, wanting to know if she would forgive him. Stories like this usually want to be neat. She did not forgive him. She didn't condemn him, either. People will still suffer in your hospitals, she said. Yes. Some because of what you built. Some in spite of it. Yes, you can't fix all of it, I know, but you can stop building the machines that make it worse. He nodded. Then say that, she said. Not that you sold this or that company. He swallowed. I won't build any more machines that hurt people like my mother, he said. Or like yours. She let the words hang there, weighed them. And I'll spend the rest of my life watching, she said finally. Not just you, all of them. All the names on all the bills. He almost laughed. It came out more like a cough. That's fair, he said. He reached for his wallet. For a second, she stiffened, thinking he might try to hand her money. By the moment, he didn't. He pulled out the folded electricity bill, the paper worn now, edges soft. He unfolded it carefully, looked at the red stamp one more time, the 3 lines on the back. I carry this, he said, every day, not as penance, as a reminder. She recognized her own handwriting, faded but still hers. Good, she said. He folded it again, tucked it back behind his mother's photo. He didn't offer it to her. It belonged, now, to the version of him that was trying. He walked to the door. The automatic panels opened for him, like they did for everyone. No special sound. Outside, the night had cleared. The city smelled of wet concrete and exhaust. Behind him, Clara moved down the ER corridor with a chart in her hand. Sneakers silent, shoulders squared. Inês sat back in the chair, the folder in her lap, heart hammering, for reasons that had nothing to do with bills this time. People would click away at this point in a video if the story were just about a billionaire's panic attack and some nice gestures. That wasn't what this was. The cost of his change would show up elsewhere. Board members grumbling, investors shifting, a younger, hungrier CEO taking his place with different priorities, internal fights over budgets. Some of the quiet programs Rafael had started would survive, others wouldn't. The extra nurse on nights at Snow Gabriel might become a permanent line item. The staff fund might shrink or grow. The absence of Monteiro collections as an in-house shark would remain. Nothing would be clean. Inês would grow up. She would finish school, watching the patterns of who got sick and who got better. Maybe she would study medicine, to stand where her mother stood, but with more power to sign orders. Maybe she would study law, to write different kinds of letters on different kinds of paper. Maybe she would study numbers like he did, but bend them another way. She would remember, always, the night she tapped a bill against a glass door and refused to go home. The day she walked into a tower and left an envelope on a desk. The way a man in a suit had looked lying on a gurney, afraid. Clara would keep working nights for a while. Her feet would not bleed as much. Her back would still ache. She would get a real weekend off occasionally. She would still watch her blood sugar like a hawk. The fridge, more often than not, would hum. She would never know exactly how many policies, memos, and quiet arguments had her name humming underneath them like a buried line of code. Rafael would not become a saint. He would sit on non-profit boards. He would donate money. He would speak at conferences about lessons learned, sometimes a little too smoothly. He would still wince when he passed public hospital corridors. He would still wake up some nights with his heart racing, not from panic this time, but from remembering all the times he had been the one on the other side of the table, saying, "We can't afford it." Sometimes, when he walked into a hospital with his name on it, he would drop by the ER and stand near the glass doors for a minute, watching the nurses move. He would see white sneakers with blue wings. He would see girls with folders. He would see bills in hands. And he would know, really know, not just think, that every spreadsheet had someone's face hiding behind it. In some other building, on some other night, a different envelope with a red stamp would land on a different table. The logo at the top would not say Monteiro. It would say the name of a company most people never noticed, but that decided who could miss one payment and who could not. Someone else would press their thumb into the paper hard enough to leave a mark, would consider whether to knock on a door, write a letter, change a policy. Stories like this don't end when the screen goes black. They fold into other stories, other corridors, other glass doors. And in the apartment where the fridge hummed and the light stayed on, a girl who used to be invisible sat at a table one night, pen in hand, writing in a notebook for a scholarship application. The prompt asked for a moment when she had felt powerless and what she had done anyway. She wrote about a bill with a red stamp, a glass door, a man on a gurney, and 10 seconds where her mother put a hand on his chest and asked if he was okay without knowing he was the one who had signed half her problems. Some of the people who watched that story years later would click to the next video automatically, curiosity pulling them toward another case where a number on a page collided with a person. On the other side of the city, in a building without a logo on the facade, a thin envelope waited in a drawer. Carimbo vermilion, already drying. It had nothing to do with hospitals, and everything to do with another kind of debt. That was someone else's final notice. Someone else's night at the glass. Another story.